My first Elder Scroll game was Morrowind back in the early 2000s, and I played Oblivion and Skyrim when they came out. I never really thought about playing Arena or Daggerfall because I heard from various people that they are horribly old fashioned and player unfriendly, even by the standards of Morrowind when it was fresh and relevant. Then I happened to see Sorcerer's Dave's YouTube playthrough of Daggerfall in Unity, which I didn't realize existed until I saw the playthrough and decided to give it a try. Overall, I thought that Daggerfall is a very good game. Morrowind is still my favorite though, but it was interesting to see the series was like before the transition to full 3D. A more comprehensive lore, a more and better characters, and a fully fleshed out and static setting. I finally come to understand the series' roots as a dungeon crawler as opposed to a true open world like it was in Morrowind onwards. I was skeptical about the procedurally generated dungeons that could take weeks of in-game time to explore, even after smaller dungeons options in Unity. I think that the feature really adds to the experience. Despite eventually learning how different blocks and modules work, I was always excited to see what was up next, and the randomness makes it very tense. The dungeon in this game was something else. Also, the enemies in Daggerfall are terrifying. I thought Morrowind was bad, such as Skeleton, Ghost, and Dogger, but despite being a flat spirit, this game is way worse in many regards. The skeleton in this game still made me a long jump after I could kill them in one hit. Zombies and mummies are nightmare fuel, and I can't really comment on scorpions and spiders because I had to get a mod to turn them into bears. Even the human spirits are intimidating as they walk around steadily in the darkness. Strangely, nothing is nearly as scary in Oblivion or Skyrim, except for maybe giant spiders. The world, while not as lively as Oblivion or Skyrim, has its charm. If this was ever remade for modern audience, it would heavily benefit from a massively condensed world with each nation states having one or two towers and with only having few major cities and castles beside Wayrest and Sentinels and Daggerfall. However, the scale is impressive. Even though most travel is basically fast travel, it is nice change of pace to see months instead of days passing you through place to place. And instead of a static few towns, the multitude of tiny 100 population settlements are pretty novel. Store quality was both frustrating and fascinating on the one hand. You never know what you will find, and on the other, it can be nearly impossible to buy something you are looking for when you have hundreds or thousands of gold. In later credits, of course, burning a hole in your pocket. The questing was very different, but not bad. I won't say it's bad. The quests themselves have some interesting premise and good writing and remind me something to do like you do in Morrowind side quest. Even though I hate some of the quest that has timer on it. Store quality was both frustrating and fascinating On one hand, you will never know what you will find. On the other hand, it is nearly impossible to buy something you are looking for when you have hundreds or thousands of golds burning a hole in your pocket. The only aspect that made them less memorable was the locations are random and not tied to any specific location that you can remember fondly later on. And also the fact that they are repeated throughout the game makes them lose a bit of an impact. If only you could have some fewer amounts of well-written generated quests that are not randomly generated, a few more of them, then the questing becomes a bit more memorable. If only we could have somewhat of a more limited version of the quest system in the next Elder Scrolls title and no Radiant quest. Overall, the game is very ambitious. I don't think it's the best Elder Scrolls game, far from it. It's not even the second best of the Elder Scrolls series. The main quest was good until it wasn't. It didn't even start until it was level 7 or 8, and I thought it was decent, a little too mid-90s overly serious. The political intrigue was entertaining and respectfully nuanced, but starting with Lysandra's tomb, I lost interest and just wanted to finish the game and get them over with. Three of the four final dungeons seemed promising, but were too much of a slog for me. They had some of the interesting elements of the game, like the final room of Lysandra's tomb, the first room of Woodbourne Hall, and the treasury of Castle Daggerfall. But they weren't unique enough to make it differentiable from the rest of the game. Even the Metallon Crux, which is definitely the best dungeon just because how insane it was, although great, was too much of a filler in some aspect. About 70% of it was great, and other 30% was a bit too obtuse to be enjoyable. I feel like Daggerfall, like the rest of the series, kinda co-evolved and shows its roots in Dungeons and Dragons. It's no secret, many if not the most of the RPG video games from Final Fantasy to Elder Scrolls owe a lot to D&D. But this one really captured the spirit of the second edition in my opinion. It got a lot of focus on dungeon delving and looting treasures rather than character development or incredibly detailed world. The dungeons are the goal and the reward for the most part. More it correspond with third edition, which was more of a story and things got much more technical and open-ended. And now we are in the 5th edition with Skyrim, where the focus is more about personal expressions and epic story rather than just grabbing the loot from the old tomb and caves. Daggerfall exudes this hardcore generic fantasy pre-Lord of the Ring movies 5 that only could come from mid to late 90s. It feels like a gaming equivalent of Tomb of Horrors or something similar of that era. It was interesting to look back on how that worked and how it holds up. Dated, but it's still good on its own right. So while Daggerfall isn't perfect, it is very enjoyable, largely because how different it is from the rest of the series. I may even start another character just to see how playing mages work. And this is coming from someone who hates mage style gameplay in just about everything in other games. I used limited utility magic like mysticism and alterations in my first playthrough, and destruction is massively overpowered. So is the illusions from stealth. I might try min-maxing by immediately getting lycanthropy for those massive stat boosts and then throwing fireballs and using hand to hand just to destroy everything. It was a brilliant game for its time, but the gameplay has aged very poorly. I am sad to say that the control was very clunky as heck and combat is not exactly enjoyable. The dungeons are repetitive nightmare mazes of twisty corridors and generic rooms that you will get lost. You will get lost, sometimes for hours. Some dungeons are buggy and can't be finished without cheating. Really, the whole game is full of bugs, glitches of the map is a thing, so much so that the final patch of the developers gave up and just added shortcuts to put you back to your last known on-map position. That said, the plot is amazing and the way it distilled some seemingly disconnected mission for this and member of this or that quest is brilliant. The world feels huge in a way that the series has never managed again. You will constantly be sent to places you have never seen before, and you have to ask your way around to find your destinations. Literally. Book mentions legends that you can decide to track down to see if they are true, and in some cases they are. You can and should devise your own custom spells tailored specifically to your character skills and quest needs, season pass, etc. I strongly recommend giving it a chance. Let's say for a few hours, if you can stomach some dungeons and maybe content to cheat your way through it, then try and finish it. I think it's worth it for the history purpose alone. But I do believe that the future's game in the series have largely elevated this franchise and have involved many new mechanics that have been far more enjoyable than Daggerfall. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.